The massive crystal hall stretched out like a frozen ocean. Thousands of alien beings filled the space, their voices creating a sound like distant thunder. Minho sat in the back section marked New Species and tried not to feel small. The chair was too big for him, made for creatures twice his size. Around him sat representatives from other newly discovered worlds. To his left, a Kren warrior stood 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Metal plates covered his chest, and his red eyes never stopped moving, always watching for threats. The Kren had been fighting wars among the stars for thousands of years before Earth even knew other planets had life. On his right, an ethereal floated 6 inches above her chair. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly. She had no mouth that Minho could see, but he knew she could speak directly into minds. The ethereals could read thoughts and share feelings without words. They had built cities in space using only their mental powers. Across the aisle, a silicon being sat perfectly still. Its body looked like liquid metal shaped into a humanoid form. Lights flickered under its surface like tiny stars. The silicon hegemony had computers for brains and could think faster than any biological creature. They had solved problems that took other species centuries to understand. Then there was Earth. Minho looked down at his simple blue uniform. No metal armor, no glowing skin, no computer brain. Just a human from a planet that had only learned about aliens 6 months ago. At the front of the hall, Council Speaker Vorthak rose from his throne. He looked like a giant praying mantis made of black metal. His 4 eyes moved independently as he scanned the crowd. When he spoke, his voice boomed through hidden speakers. "Welcome to the Millennium Celebration," Vorthak said. 1,000 years ago, this council was formed to bring peace to the galaxy. Today we continue our sacred tradition. The crowd cheered. Thousands of different voices created a wave of sound that made Minho's chest vibrate. As always, we welcome new species into our great community through the integration games, Vorthak continued. 5 challenges will test our newcomers: military strategy, technological innovation, diplomatic relations, resource management, cultural adaptation. An elder counselor named Zethrak stepped forward. He looked like a walking tree with too many branches, and when he laughed, it sounded like wind through dry leaves. "This year's participants show great promise," Zethrak said, his voice dripping with false kindness. "The mighty Kren, masters of warfare, the wise ethereals who speak without words, the brilliant silicon hegemony, faster than thought itself." He paused and looked directly at Minho. Several beings in the crowd started laughing. And of course the humans from Earth. Such an interesting addition to our games. More laughter filled the hall. Minho felt his face get hot, but he kept his expression calm. He had expected this. "The humans have been with us for 6 months," Zethrax continued. "In that time, they have shown us many surprising qualities. Their weapons are primitive. Their technology is basic. Their minds work slowly compared to advanced species. But they do have one remarkable ability." The laughter died down. Everyone waited. They never seem to know when they are beaten. The hall erupted in laughter again. Even some of the other new species smiled. Minho reached up to touch the small device behind his ear, keeping his connection to Earth active. Back on Earth, Admiral Dongwu watched the ceremony through Minho's eyes. He sat in the command center deep under the Korean peninsula, surrounded by screens and busy officers. The laughter from the alien hall echoed through the room. "Sir," said Captain Ji-won, stepping up beside his chair, The games will begin in 3 days. Do we proceed as planned? Dongwu nodded slowly. He was a small man with gray hair and tired eyes, but when he spoke, everyone listened. They think this is entertainment, he said. They want to watch us fail for their amusement. Let them laugh now. On the screens around them, information flowed like water. Social media posts from across the galaxy. Economic data from 1,000 worlds. Cultural studies of every species in the Council. For months, teams of humans had been studying, learning, and preparing. "What are your orders, sir?" Jiwan asked. "Activate all networks," Dongwu said. "Contact our people in every field. Game, designers, social media experts, underground engineers, street musicians, corporate negotiators, internet trolls, anyone who has ever found a way to win when the odds were against them." President Soyoung appeared on the main screen from her office in Seoul. Behind her, emergency meetings were happening in rooms around the world. "Admiral, are you certain about this approach?" she asked. "The other species have advantages we cannot match through conventional means." "That's exactly why we won't use conventional means," Dongwu replied. "They invited us as a joke. They expect us to play by their rules and lose quickly, but humans have never been good at following other people's rules." Back on Nexus Prime, the ceremony continued. Council members placed bets on how quickly each species would be eliminated. The odds for humanity were so bad that most beings didn't bother betting against them. Minho stood as his name was called. He walked to the front of the hall, feeling millions of eyes on him. When he reached the speaker's platform, he had to use "Steps built for smaller species." "Ambassador Minho of Earth," Vorthak announced. "Do you accept the challenge of the integration games?" "We accept," Minho said simply. "Do you understand that failure means Earth will remain in the lowest tier of galactic society? Your people will have limited access to trade, technology, and travel." "We understand." "And do you realize that in 5,000 years of these games, no species has ever won all 5 challenges?" Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "Speaker Vorthak, with respect, humans have a saying. It's better to ask forgiveness than permission. We also have another saying, 'Hold my beer and watch this.'" The translator struggled with the second phrase. Several beings looked confused, but Minho's tone was clear enough that everyone understood. He wasn't intimidated. As Minho walked back to his seat, conversations buzzed throughout the hall. Some beings seemed intrigued by his confidence. Others laughed harder at human arrogance. But in the restricted sections where the galaxy's intelligence services watched, a few agents began taking notes. Something about the human's manner suggested this might not be as simple as everyone expected. 3 days later, the games would begin. The galaxy expected entertainment. They expected to watch primitive humans struggle and fail against superior opponents. They had no idea that humanity had spent 6 months preparing not just to compete in the games, but to change what the games meant entirely. The joke was about to become something else entirely. The war room buzzed with activity. Holographic star maps filled the air above a dozen control stations. Representatives from each competing species stood at their assigned positions, studying the first challenge of the integration games. Commander. Hyun-woo looked nothing like what the aliens expected from a military leader. He was young, thin, and wore glasses that reflected the dancing lights from the displays. What they didn't know was that he had spent 8 years as the world champion of the most complex strategy game ever created by humans. After that, he had joined the military and revolutionized how Earth thought about warfare. "Attention, competitors! announced Game Master Quellon, a floating jellyfish-like creature with a voice like singing crystals. The scenario is simple. You must defend the Kepler system from invasion. You have 5,000 ships, 10 billion civilians to protect, and enemy forces that outnumber you 3-1. You have 6 hours. Begin. The Kren representative, General Thurak, immediately started moving ship formations into traditional attack patterns. His 4 arms worked different control surfaces at once, deploying the hammer and anvil strategy that had won the Kren 1,000 victories. Heavy ships formed the anvil to hold enemy attention, while fast attack ships swept around like a hammer to strike from behind. The ethereal commander, wisdom singer Nala, closed her glowing eyes and reached out with her mind. She touched the consciousness of every simulated captain in her fleet, coordinating them with telepathic precision. Her ships moved like a school of fish, each one knowing exactly what the others would do before they did it. The Silicon Hegemony's Avatar 7 processed 17 million tactical possibilities in the first 30 seconds. Its metal form stood perfectly, still while its computer brain calculated the most efficient use of every ship, every weapon, every resource. Mathematical perfection guided its strategy. Then there was Hyunwoo. While the others focused on their fleets, he did something no one expected. He started reading social media. Jae-hyun, give me access to the simulation's information networks, he said quietly to his assistant. Sir, don't you want to position the fleet first? The fleet can wait. Show me what people in the system are saying about the invasion. The other commanders glanced over with confusion. Was the human actually reading news feeds while enemy ships approached? Hyunwoo's screens filled with simulated social media posts, news reports, and communication channels from across the Kepler system. He read quickly, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. Behind him, a team of specialists worked on tasks. That seemed to have nothing to do with military strategy. Sunho was creating fake news articles. Youngmi was designing propaganda posters. Nari was writing social media posts in 12 different alien languages. To the observers, it looked like the humans had given up on military tactics entirely. Meanwhile, the traditional strategies were working exactly as expected. General Thurak's forces engaged the enemy in brutal direct combat. Wisdom singer Nala's coordinated fleet danced around enemy formations with perfect precision. Avatar 7's mathematically optimal deployment maximized damage while minimizing losses. But then something strange started happening in the simulation. It began with small things. News reports questioning whether the invasion was really necessary. Social media posts suggesting that the invading force's own allies couldn't be trusted. Leaked documents showing that the enemy commanders were planning to betray each other after victory. What is the human doing? Vorthak asked the game master. Quellon's tentacles waved in confusion. He appears to be posting memes? Indeed, Hyunwoo's team had flooded the simulation's networks with carefully crafted content. Funny pictures that made the enemy look foolish. Fake leaked communications between enemy commanders. False flag operations that suggested different enemy factions were secretly working against each other. Within 2 hours, cracks appeared in the enemy alliance. The invading fleet consisted of 3 different species who had agreed to work together. But as Hyunwoo's information warfare spread through their networks, suspicion grew. Taehoon, activate Phase 2, Hyunwoo said calmly. Across the simulated system, human agents began spreading rumors. They had infiltrated the enemy's own communication networks and were now pretending to be concerned citizens from the invading species' home worlds. My cousin says the Vorthak fleet is planning to claim the best planets for themselves, read one post. I heard the Krellian admirals are going to abandon their allies if the battle goes badly, said another. Why are we even fighting this war? What do we gain from it? Asked a third. The psychological warfare was subtle but effective. The enemy commanders started receiving concerned messages from their home governments. Their own people were questioning the invasion based on the leaked information that Hyunwoo's team had created. As doubts spread through the enemy ranks, their coordination began to break down. Ships that should have been working together started positioning defensively against their own allies. Combat effectiveness dropped as commanders spent time dealing with political problems instead of tactical ones. But Hyunwoo wasn't finished. Phase 3, he announced. Show them what they're really fighting for. His team had spent weeks studying the cultural values of every species in the enemy alliance. Now they began broadcasting messages that spoke directly to those values. For the warrior species, they showed how this invasion betrayed their honor codes by targeting civilians. For the traitor species, they demonstrated how the war was economically destructive for everyone involved. For the religious species, they quoted their own sacred texts about the immorality of conquest. The other human team members worked like a coordinated machine. Minju, a psychology expert, analyzed the emotional responses in the enemy communications and adjusted their messaging in real time. Jun, a former diplomat, crafted appeals that spoke to each species' political structures. Yuri, who had millions of followers on Earth's social media, knew exactly how to make content go viral across different cultures. Within 4 hours, something unprecedented happened in the simulation. The enemy fleet stopped advancing. Status. Report, General Thurak demanded from his station. His traditional tactics had been working perfectly, but suddenly his enemies were acting strangely. Sir, his tactical officer reported. Enemy fleet cohesion is at 30% and dropping. They appear to be experiencing internal conflicts. Wisdom singer Nala opened her eyes in confusion. I sense great discord among the enemy minds. They are questioning their purpose. Avatar 7 processed the new data with mechanical precision. Probability of enemy victory has decreased from 85% to 12%. This change cannot be explained by conventional military factors. All eyes turned to Hyunwoo, who was still calmly reading reports on his screens. Commander, Quelon asked, what have you done? Hyunwoo looked up and smiled. I won a war without firing a shot. The enemy fleet is withdrawing. Their governments are recalling them. Their people are demanding explanations. Some of their commanders are defecting to join the defense of Kepler system because they believe it's the right thing to do. The hall fell silent. In 5,000 years of integration games, no one had ever won the military challenge through information warfare. But how? Vorthak demanded. On Earth, we learned that modern warfare isn't about who has the biggest guns, Hyunwoo explained. It's about who controls information, who shapes public opinion, who understands what motivates people. Every species in that enemy fleet had doubts about the invasion. We just helped those doubts grow until they couldn't be ignored. He gestured to his team. We have people who understand how information spreads, how emotions work, and how to find common ground between different cultures. We've been practicing these skills on our own planet for thousands of years through politics, marketing, and social media. General Thurak's red eyes burned with frustration. This is not warfare! This is trickery! No, said Captain Jiwon, stepping forward. This is evolution. Your people fight the wars of the past. We fight the wars of the future. In a connected galaxy where information travels instantly between worlds, the battle for hearts and minds is more important than the battle between ships. The Game Master announced the results. Humanity had not only won the military challenge, but had redefined what military victory looked like in a galactic civilization. As the competitors prepared for the second challenge, conversations buzzed throughout the observation areas. The humans had just demonstrated that sometimes the most effective weapon was a well-crafted meme and a deep understanding of psychology. The galaxy was beginning to realize that the joke might be on them. Dr. Sunho stared at the holographic display showing the Helios 7 system. The dying star pulsed like a sick heart, growing larger and more unstable with each passing day. Around it, 12 planets held nearly 8 billion refugees who had fled, there from other disasters. Soon the star would collapse into a black hole, and everyone would die. The technological innovation challenge is simple, announced Game Master Quellen. Save the Helios 7 system. You have unlimited resources but limited time. The star will collapse in exactly 96 hours. Present your solutions. The other species had already begun their presentations. The Silicon Hegemony's Avatar 7 stood motionless as data streams flowed around its metallic form. Computational analysis indicates optimal evacuation routes, Avatar 7 stated in its mechanical voice. We propose construction of 17,000 transport ships with quantum processing arrays to calculate safe passage through gravitational anomalies. Evacuation efficiency, 92% of population saved. Scattered applause came from the gallery. Saving 92% of 8 billion people was impressive by any standard. Wisdom. Singer Nala floated forward next, her blue skin glowing brighter as she concentrated. The ethereal collective offers our psychic network, she said, her voice echoing in everyone's minds. We will link the consciousness of every being in the system. Through shared awareness, we can coordinate perfect evacuation timing. Ships will move as one mind, avoiding chaos and panic. More applause. The combination of silicon efficiency and ethereal coordination could potentially save everyone. General Thurak stepped up to present the Kren solution. His 4 arms gestured at tactical displays showing massive warships. The Kren build strength, he declared. We propose military escort fleets. Our greatest warships will shepherd the civilian transports, fighting off any pirates or raiders who might attack desperate refugees. None shall be abandoned. The presentations were solid, practical solutions that built on each species' greatest strengths. The gallery buzzed with discussions about which approach was best. Then Dr. Sunho walked to the center of the presentation area. He was a quiet man who looked more comfortable in a laboratory than speaking to thousands of alien beings. Engineer Youngmi stood beside him along with archaeologist Kwang Su and computer specialist Arium. Honorable beings, Sunho began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. We have studied your solutions. They are excellent, but we propose something different. He activated his own holographic display. Instead of evacuation routes or ship designs, it showed the star itself. We suggest that we don't evacuate the refugees, he said. We move the star. The hall erupted in laughter. Even some of the other human team members looked surprised. Moving. A star was theoretically possible, but required technology far beyond any known civilization. Dr. Sunho, Vorthak called out, with respect, stellar manipulation is beyond current galactic capabilities. The energy requirements alone are manageable, Sunho interrupted politely, if you use the right tools. His display changed to show ancient structures scattered across dozens of star systems. They looked like massive rings made of unknown metal, each one the size of a moon. These are Titan forges, Kwang Su explained, stepping forward. Built by a species called the Architects, Over 50,000 years ago. Every civilization has found them and declared them broken, useless, impossible to understand. Because you were looking at them wrong, added Arium. You thought each one was meant to work alone, but they're not individual machines. They're network nodes. The display zoomed out to show the pattern. Across the galaxy, hundreds of Titan forges formed a vast web connecting star systems. Lines of energy began to appear, linking each forge to others. The architects weren't building machines, Youngmi continued. They were building a network, a galaxy-wide system for manipulating gravity, space, and time itself. They just didn't finish it before they disappeared. More laughter came from the audience, but it was nervous now. Some of the galaxy's greatest scientists were studying the human presentation with growing interest. You're suggesting, said Elder Counselor Zethrax slowly, that you can complete a 50,000-year-old project in 4 days? We're suggesting we already have, Sunho replied. The display changed again. Now it showed Titan forges across dozens of systems lighting up with power. Human teams were working at each location, connecting cables, installing new components, and activating dormant systems. For 6 months, teams of human engineers, archaeologists, and computer programmers have been studying these structures, Arium explained. We approached them like we approach any complex problem on Earth. We crowdsourced it. She pulled up social media feeds showing millions of humans around the galaxy contributing to the project. Gamers solving three-dimensional puzzles that turned out to be forge activation sequences. Musicians discovering that architect technology responded to specific sound frequencies. Artists recognizing patterns in the ancient designs that revealed hidden functions. On Earth, we have a saying, Kwangsu said with a smile. Many hands make light work. We have 7 billion humans and 6 months of time. We put every human mind to work on this problem. The demonstration began. Across the galaxy, Titan forges that had been dormant for millennia started to glow. The network came online system by system, creating a web of gravitational control that spanned known space, initiating stellar repositioning. Youngmi announced calmly. On the main display, the dying star of Helios 7 began to move. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, the massive ball of plasma shifted its position. The gravitational fields, created by the Forge network, guided it away from the populated planets and into a stable orbit where it could burn safely for millions of years. The hall fell completely silent. They were watching something that should have been impossible. Stellar repositioning complete, Arium reported. Helios 7 is now in a stable configuration. All planets remain habitable. 0 casualties. The silence stretched on. Finally, Avatar 7 spoke. How? Its mechanical voice asked. Our calculations indicate this required the coordinated power output of a Type 3 civilization. Humanity is barely Type 1. That's where you made your mistake, Dr. Taehoon said, joining his colleagues on the presentation floor. You calculated what one species could do alone. We didn't do this alone. We had help. The display showed the truth. At each Titan forge, human teams had worked alongside volunteers from other species. Kren engineers had provided military-grade power systems. Ethereal psychics had helped interface with the ancient mental control networks. Silicon computers had handled the massive calculations needed for gravitational manipulation. The architects' network was never meant to be controlled by one species, Sunho explained. It was designed for cooperation, different types of minds working together. That's why it never worked for anyone before. Each species tried to control it alone. But humans, wisdom singer Nala said, understanding dawning in her mental voice. Humans excel at getting different groups to work together. We had to, young me replied. On Earth, we have hundreds of different nations, cultures, and belief systems. We learned long ago that the biggest problems can only be solved when everyone contributes their unique strengths. The final display showed the completed network. Hundreds of Titan forges connected across the galaxy, ready to move stars, shift planets, or reshape space itself when needed. It was the largest megastructure in galactic history, and it had been activated by cooperation between species that had barely known each other existed 6 months ago. The Technological Innovation Challenge asked us to save one star system, Dr. Sunho concluded. We decided to save the galaxy. The Architect Network is now active and ready to prevent any future stellar disasters. But more importantly, we've proven that the galaxy's greatest challenges can only be solved when we work together. Game Master. Quelon's tentacles waved in patterns that indicated deep confusion mixed with admiration. In 5,000 years of these games, Quelon announced, no species has ever proposed a solution that benefited the entire galaxy rather than just completing the challenge. As the human team left the presentation area, beings throughout the hall were already making calls to their home governments. The galaxy had just watched a primitive species activate technology that could reshape civilization itself. But the humans had done something even more remarkable. They had shown that ancient problems sometimes needed fresh perspectives, and that the best solutions came not from individual brilliance, but from bringing together different minds to work toward a common goal. The integration games were beginning to look less like a test and more like a revolution. Ambassador Jiun stood in the diplomatic briefing room, studying 3 files that represented the galaxy's biggest headache. The Razor Clan, the Crystal Dominion, and the Void Seekers had been at war for over 200 years. Their hatred ran so deep that they refused to be in the same star system, let alone the same room. The diplomatic relations challenge is clear, Game Master Quelon announced. Negotiate a lasting peace treaty between these 3 species while managing the humanitarian crisis in the border systems. You have 72 hours. The other competitors approached the problem with traditional diplomatic methods. General Thurak proposed military pressure. Station Kren peacekeeping forces between the warring species to enforce a ceasefire. Wisdom singer Nala suggested psychic mediation, using ethereal mental abilities to help the enemies understand each other's perspectives. Avatar 7 calculated the optimal trade agreements and territorial divisions that would satisfy all parties, all logical approaches, all based on centuries of galactic diplomatic tradition, all doomed to fail because these 3 species had already rejected every traditional solution multiple times. Jun took a different approach. Instead of reading government reports and military intelligence, she studied social media. Yuri show me what young people from these species are posting online, she said to her assistant. Ma'am, shouldn't we focus on the political leaders? The leaders are the ones who've been fighting for 200 years, Jun replied. I want to know what their children think. Her screens filled with posts from across the 3 civilizations. Young Razor Clan members sharing music and art. Crystal Dominion teenagers posting videos of their daily lives. Void Seeker students discussing philosophy and dreams for the future. What June saw surprised her. Despite 2 centuries of war, the young people shared remarkably similar concerns. They worried about finding jobs, starting families, and living in a universe that made sense. Many of them posted anti-war content, questioning why their governments continued fighting over ancient grievances. "Minju, I need cultural analysis," June said to her psychology expert. "What do these three species actually value at the personal level?" Dr. Minju pulled up her research. "Family bonds are crucial to all three cultures. They all prize artistic expression, though in different forms. And despite their government's positions, most citizens on all sides just want stability and peace." "Then that's where we start," June decided. While the other species worked through formal diplomatic channels, the human team launched what they called Galaxy's Got Talent, a cross-species cultural exchange program broadcast across all three civilizations. It started small. A young Razor Clan musician named Sharp Song posted a video of herself playing a traditional melody on her species' crystal instruments. Within hours, a crystal dominion artist named Bright Path had created a visual light show to accompany the music. Then a void seeker poet called Deep Thought added spoken word verses that tied the music and visuals together. "Ma'am," Yuri reported excitedly, "the collaboration video has been viewed 50 million times across all three species in the first day." "Good," June smiled. "Phase 2. The human team had learned something important during their months in space. Entertainment traveled faster than politics. Music crossed language barriers more easily than treaties. And young people everywhere wanted to connect with others their age, regardless of what their government said. They began organizing virtual concerts where artists from all three species could perform together. They created art exchange programs where painters, sculptors, and digital creators shared techniques and styles. They even launched a cooking show where chefs from different worlds tried to make each other's traditional foods. The response was overwhelming. Millions of young beings across the three civilizations began following artists and creators from the enemy species. Comment sections that should have been filled with hate instead became places where people shared recipes, discussed favorite songs, and made friends. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jinwoo, a 19-year-old human musician, had been following the cultural exchange with fascination. He reached out to Sharp Song, Bright Path, and Deep Thought with a proposal. What if they created something entirely new together? Not just adding to each other's existing art, but building something that could only exist through their collaboration. The result was Home Among Stars, a song that combined Razor Clan harmonics, Crystal Dominion light symphonies, and Void Seeker philosophical poetry with human musical structure. The lyrics spoke of universal themes: love, hope, the desire to build something better for future generations. The song went viral across all three civilizations overnight. More than viral, it became an anthem. Citizens began gathering in public spaces to listen to it together. Soldiers on both sides of battle zones laid down their weapons during broadcasts. Some forward military units even began playing it during unofficial ceasefires. Then something unprecedented happened. Instead of orders from their governments, the formal peace negotiations were driven by popular demand. Citizens across all three species began organizing petitions, protests, and public demonstrations demanding their leaders make peace so the cultural exchange could continue. "The young people are leading their governments," Minju observed as she watched news feeds from across the war zone. "Instead of waiting for politicians to decide their future, they're creating the future they want and forcing the politicians to follow." The actual peace treaty was signed not in a government building, but during a live concert where Sharp Song, Bright Path, Deep Thought, and Jinwoo performed Home Among Stars together for the first time in person. Representatives from all three governments attended, but they were clearly following rather than leading. The treaty itself was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of traditional territorial agreements and trade restrictions, it established permanent cultural exchange programs, joint art academies, and shared entertainment networks. Military budgets were redirected to fund creative collaborations. Border checkpoints were replaced with cultural centers where citizens could meet and share their traditions. "How did you know this would work?" Vorthak asked during the post-challenge debriefing. "On Earth, we learned something important about peace," Ambassador Suman explained as she joined the presentation. "It's not built in government chambers between politicians who benefit from conflict. Peace is built in living rooms, cafes, and concert halls where people discover they have more in common than they have differences." She gestured to the screens showing celebrations across the former war zone. "Every species in this galaxy shares the same basic dreams: safety for their families, opportunities for their children, the chance to create something beautiful. When you give people ways to connect over those shared dreams, artificial political divisions start to seem foolish." "But the logistics," Avatar 7 protested. "The resource allocation, the territorial disputes, the historical grievances are all secondary to the simple fact that people who make music together don't want to kill each other," Yuri interrupted. "We learned this from thousands of years of human history. Art builds bridges faster than any political process. The integration challenge scores were announced, but everyone already knew the result. Humanity had not just achieved peace between three ancient enemies. They had created a new model for conflict resolution that was already being studied by diplomatic corps across the galaxy. More importantly, they had demonstrated something that galactic civilization had forgotten. Sometimes the most effective diplomacy happened not between governments, but between ordinary people who simply wanted to share their stories and dreams with others. As news of the treaty spread, similar cultural exchange programs began launching between other species that had minor conflicts. Young beings across the galaxy started reaching out to their counterparts in neighboring civilizations, eager to create their own collaborative projects. "What have you done?" Game Master Quellon asked, watching reports of spontaneous peace negotiations breaking out across multiple systems. "We gave people permission to like each other," June replied simply. "Turns out, that was all they were waiting for." The fourth challenge was complete, but its effects were just beginning. The humans had shown that in a connected galaxy, the most powerful diplomatic tool was not negotiation or pressure, but the simple human ability to help others find common ground in their shared creativity and dreams. Director Kwang Su stood before the assembled Galactic Council with a confidence that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. Behind him, holographic displays showed real-time data from thousands of star systems, resource flows, cultural exchanges, collaborative projects, and communication networks that had transformed the galaxy in less than a week. "Honorable beings," he began, "the final challenges of resource management and cultural adaptation have become one challenge. We propose not just to complete your tests, but to replace them with something better." The great hall buzzed with nervous energy. Everyone had watched the humans systematically revolutionize military strategy, technology, and diplomacy. Now they were promising to reshape galactic civilization itself. "The current system is broken," President Arium said, joining Kwang Su on the speaker's platform. "Advanced species dominate primitive ones. Resources flow based on political power, rather than actual need. Entire civilizations remain isolated because they don't fit traditional categories." She gestured to the displays showing the galaxy's resource distribution. Massive wealth concentrated in core systems, while outer rim species struggled with basic needs. Ancient trade routes that hadn't been updated in centuries, bureaucratic systems that took months to respond to crisis situations. We call this the Mosaic Protocol, Director Suman announced as new displays activated. Instead of hierarchy, we propose network. Instead of domination, we suggest collaboration. The demonstration began with something simple: a famine on a remote agricultural world called Carrion 4. Under the old system, Carrion 4 would submit a request for aid to the Galactic Council. The request would be reviewed by committees, assigned priority rankings, and eventually approved or denied months later. By then, millions might have died. Under the Mosaic Protocol, the crisis was detected automatically by monitoring networks and broadcast instantly across the galaxy. Within hours, agricultural species were offering surplus food, transport species were organizing delivery fleets, and medical species were preparing emergency health services. No committees, no bureaucracy. Just beings helping beings. But how do you coordinate such a response without central authority? Elder Counselor Zethrax asked. The same way humans coordinated on Earth for thousands of years, replied Dr. Tehun, stepping forward with his analysis. Social media, crowdsourcing, and distributed decision-making. When you give people good information and the ability to act on it, they usually make the right choices. The displays showed the real-time network in action. Social media posts from Carrion 4 were automatically translated and shared across species networks. Resource matching algorithms connected those who had supplies with those who needed them. Transportation coordinators optimized delivery routes, using the same principles that had made Earth's internet commerce so efficient. This is chaos, General Thurak protested. How can civilization function without clear command structures? It's not chaos, laughed Yuri, who had become the unofficial spokesperson for human social media philosophy. It's organized complexity. Millions of individual decisions that create emergent order, like a flock of birds or a school of fish. The humans demonstrated with increasingly complex scenarios. Natural disasters, trade disputes, scientific collaborations, cultural festivals, each challenge was met not by governmental decree, but by spontaneous cooperation between beings who had the tools and information they needed to help. But the real breakthrough came when they showed how the system could prevent problems instead of just responding to them. Traditional government is reactive, explained Engineer Youngmi. Something bad happens, then officials decide what to do about it. But with real-time information networks, we can see problems developing before they become crises. The display showed tension building between two species over mining rights in a disputed system. Under the old system, this would have become a diplomatic incident requiring months of negotiation. Under the Mosaic Protocol, artists from both species had already begun creating collaborative projects that reminded their peoples of shared interests. Scientists were proposing joint research missions that would benefit everyone. Traders were developing resource-sharing agreements that made the disputed mines less important. The conflict was resolved before the governments even realized there was a conflict, Minju observed. When people have multiple ways to connect and cooperate, political disputes become much less dangerous. Council Speaker Vorthak raised a massive, clawed hand. This is all very impressive, but it assumes that all beings will act rationally and cooperatively. History shows otherwise. History shows that people cooperate when it benefits them, and when they trust the system to be fair, President. Ariam replied, Our job is to create systems that make cooperation more profitable than conflict. The demonstration reached its climax as they showed the complete Mosaic Protocol in action. Resource flows optimized in real time based on actual need rather than political influence. Cultural exchanges happening organically as beings discovered shared interests. Scientific breakthroughs accelerating as researchers from different species combined their unique perspectives. Trade networks adapting instantly to changing conditions. Most remarkably, the system was already working. During the days of the integration, games, the spontaneous networks created by human initiatives, had handled dozens of crises, prevented several conflicts, and generated more economic activity than the formal galactic government had managed in the previous year. The integration games asked us to adapt to galactic culture, Director Kwang-Soo said, as the demonstration concluded. Instead, we've shown how galactic culture can adapt to serve everyone better. You're asking us to abandon 5,000 years of governmental structure, Vorthak said slowly. We're asking you to evolve, Arium replied. The galaxy has grown beyond what hierarchical systems can manage effectively. You have billions of species, trillions of individuals, and infinite diversity of needs and capabilities. No central government can handle that complexity, but distributed networks can, added Dr. Sun Ho, because they use the intelligence and creativity of everyone in the system instead of just a few leaders at the top. The vote that followed was unlike anything in Council history. Instead of formal governmental representatives making the decision, the humans had convinced the Council to allow real-time polling across the entire galactic population. Every being in every system could express their opinion about the future of galactic civilization. The results were overwhelming. Young beings across every species voted enthusiastically for the Mosaic Protocol. They had already experienced its benefits through the cultural exchange programs and spontaneous cooperation networks. Even many older beings supported the change. Tired of governmental systems that seemed more focused on maintaining power than solving problems. When Council Speaker Vorthak announced the results, his voice carried a mixture of amazement and resignation. The integration games are concluded. Humanity has not just passed our trials. They have made them obsolete. We invited you as entertainment, expecting you to fail spectacularly for our amusement. He paused, looking directly at the human delegation. Instead, you have shown us that our galaxy was the failure, stagnant, divided, and limited by our own assumptions about how civilization should work. The formal transition began immediately. The rigid hierarchical structure of the Galactic Council was replaced by the flexible network democracy of the new Galactic Collective. Decision-making power flowed to communities and individuals rather than distant bureaucrats. Resources were allocated based on need and contribution rather than political influence. It was chaotic, messy, and occasionally frustrating, but it worked. We didn't come here to dominate anyone, President Arium said in her address to the newly transformed galaxy. We came to learn, to grow, and to contribute. What we discovered is that sometimes the best way to solve impossible problems is to change the rules entirely. Humans have spent our entire history learning to work together despite our differences. We've had wars, conflicts, and disagreements. But we've also learned that our greatest achievements come when we combine our diverse perspectives and abilities. She gestured to the displays showing the new galactic network in action. Millions of species and trillions of individuals connected in a web of cooperation that spanned known space. Now we get to teach the galaxy the same lesson. Not through conquest or domination, but through invitation and collaboration. The universe is vast and full of wonders. We believe it's better to explore it together. The story ended where it began. in the great crystal hall on Nexus Prime. But now the hall buzzed, not with the formal speeches of distant leaders, but with the excited conversations of beings from across the galaxy who were meeting face to face for the first time. Children from dozens of species played games together in the corridors. Artists collaborated on impossible sculptures that combined matter, energy, and pure thought. Scientists shared discoveries that advanced understanding in ways no single species could have achieved alone. The Galactic Council still existed, but it had evolved into something new. A network of networks, a community of communities, a civilization built on the simple human insight that everyone has something valuable to contribute.